Welcome to Canucks After Dark. Here are your hosts, Parker Hallowell and Clay Emo.
Good evening, Vancouver, and welcome back to Canucks After Dark, barely after dark tonight. A nice early, breezy 8 p.m. showtime. Hope you're all doing well. Coming fresh off of a Canucks win against the Chicago Blackhawks. As always, joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. How are you doing today, Clay?
I am great, Parker. And speaking of coming fresh off of something, didn't I just see you on another stream about 2 minutes ago?
Yeah, there's no time to rest here today. We went straight from the ParkersPucks Canucks post-game show into this, about 2 minutes of gap between them. I'm organized, I think. I'm clicking things as we go, but I think we're going to be okay.
Well, you're coming fresh from your own post-game. I'm coming fresh from a family dinner. That's why I have the dad look tonight, but I hope the viewers don't mind tonight, bringing some respectability. Not that you don't, but you know what I mean.
I'm just wearing a t-shirt. We've got quite a bit to talk about tonight because in the last week, quite a few things have happened.
We haven't lost in regulation in the last week.
We haven't lost. The Canucks have not lost in regulation. The Canucks also hired a general manager in the last week, which we haven't talked about yet. They played 4 games. There's trade rumors flying. We talked a little bit about JT Miller last week, but now names like Conor Garland are in the mix. We've got the All-Star game to preview. I know you're excited about that. I know you're an avid All-Star game watcher. Did you see, before we get started, did you see what they're doing for part of the skills competition?
No, tell me, educate me, Parker.
For the skills competition, they're doing 2 outdoor events. It's in Vegas. So they are going to take 8 players by boat into the Bellagio fountains to shoot pucks through the fountains at targets. And another one is they're playing blackjack, inaccuracy shooting with a big blackjack board where you have to shoot pucks to make 21.
Okay.
Which is very fun and very, that came out today and I thought it was really interesting.
So very Vegas centric, obviously. So what happens when the All-Star game is, say, in wherever, Columbus? What are they going to do?
There's nothing to do there. I don't know if Columbus they have a cannon, just cannon related things, maybe.
Sure.
Some war reenactments, maybe. I don't know.
Very good.
So yeah, let's do our normal thing where we sort of go over the last week. And honestly, normally we start with the first game, but this game just happened. I think we start with the game that the Canucks just had, which I haven't edited the score yet. It was 3. No, it's the wrong game. That was Vancouver, Nashville 3, Chicago 1, banner up. All right.
Very good.
The Canucks take down the Blackhawks 3-1 in not a very exciting game other than like the first 6 minutes.
Yeah, this was slightly more exciting than the Saturday game, thank goodness. But at the same time, I don't know about you. I remember I was watching from the keg, so I was barely paying attention. But it never seemed like the Canucks were in danger of losing this game. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, they played actually a really good defensive game. It felt like they sort of lulled the Blackhawks down. They took all the energy out of that arena. Like, it's a road game in one of the most excitable arenas in hockey, right? The United Center.
Yeah.
Sure, the Blackhawks are kind of bad right now, but that crowd was dead tonight. Like, there was no excitement. There was no energy. Canucks score once in the first, once in the second. And the Blackhawks just never really felt like they were going to get back in it. Halak was playing well. The defense was keeping everything to the outside. He's just it was one of those games where they just went in, did what they had to do, and they're out.
That's true. I'm not sure if you mentioned this on your live stream, but guys like Pettersson and Garland, they didn't show up on the score sheet, but they played well when it comes to possession and things like that. They had a solid game, good enough.
Mm-hmm. They were good enough. Honestly, what stood out to me was JT Miller and Brock Besser.
Yeah,
the two of them looked fantastic together. They were playing really well. I made the analogy on my show that it looked like they were just sort of dragging Jason Dickinson around out there. He looked a full step behind, not even a half step behind. He didn't look great, but Miller and Besser were excellent tonight. And they really sort of led the way, I think.
Yeah, kind of like if you and Gio were on a line with me. I think that's what it would look like. Of course, I'm the Dickinson. How about Luke Schenn's 12 hits? What about
12 hits? Is that a record or is 13 the record?
All I know is that it matched what the Canucks did as a team on Saturday night, which is pretty crazy.
Yes. Yeah, Luke Shen, 12 hits and a goal. Big night for him. The empty netter almost made the mistake that got the Blackhawks back in it at the end there. Had that pinch in the offensive zone. A little aggressive with 45 seconds to go when you're up by a goal, but he went for it, failed. 3-on-2 the other way. Canucks only have one D-man back and a forward. But again, they played it really well. They kept everything to the outside. And then Luke Shen blocks a Patrick Kane shot and fires it dead center 190 feet.
Guys can't even shoot that accurately from the face-off circle in front of the net, let alone the one at the far end. That was very impressive.
Yeah, excellent from Luke Shen. He was fantastic. Honestly, though, Quinn Hughes, again, he's just so good. Every single game I watch him, like I focus on him for a while, and I'm like, it's not fair. Like there's battles where he just sort of takes the puck, skates away from the guy, and you look like, oh, he's 7 feet away from him now. Like, I don't know how that happened. I don't know where that distance came from. But he's just, for a 22-year-old to just be so smart and think so far ahead and just be able to create that separation, be so calm about all of it is insane.
Parker, I remember going to one of those summer showcase or summer showdowns or whatever, where they bring in the prospects before they played a pro game. And I took one simple video of him doing pivots at center ice, but racing against another guy. I don't even know who it was. Yeah. And even then, his edge work and the way he moved, it was crazy because you could see, even as whatever he was, 17 or 18-year-old, just how good he was, or maybe 18 or 19 if he just got drafted. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Beautiful.
A great game. Penalty kill goes 2 for 2. Apparently they've gone 13 in a row without allowing a goal, which is crazy because they went like 6 games in a row with allowing goals. So a good bounce back from that. But honestly, just a good overall game. And Halak played great, except for that one goal.
Yeah, he was fine. You know, and I was in the car on the way home from dinner, and then I came in and I said to my son, Sean, what happened? And Sean goes, maybe it was almost like a change up. Like Connor Murphy wound up and the puck didn't really go that fast ultimately.
Yeah, it was a fine shot. It was, I think they said it was like 78 miles an hour.
Oh,
which is,
okay. It didn't look that fast.
It's fine. Okay. Yeah. It just went between the glove and the body, and he just sort of missed it, which is unfortunate.
And I must say, I know we want to move quickly tonight, but one thing, we mentioned the penalty kill, great. We got to mention the power play though, another 0-for.
Yeah, exactly. They go 0 for 4 on the power play, and they keep continuing to struggle to score. Right? They score 2 goals basically tonight, if you ignore the empty netter, which I think is fair. They score 0 goals last game. They scored 5 goals against the Jets, but in the games before that, they scored 2-1-1 goals. So they've had one game out of their last 6 where they've had more than 2 goals, which isn't good enough. The Canucks, they showed a stat in the game against the Jets, and they're like 14-1-1 when they score 3 times, which isn't that high of a number. No. The thing is, the Canucks goaltending is so good that as long as they score 3 goals, most of the time they're winning, right? Like I said, 14-1-1 with 3 goals. So they just need to score more goals.
I'm sure Demko and Halak and even Martin, they're just begging, pleading them to pop a couple for him.
Yeah, their life would be so much easier. I mean, they like think about how hard Demko has to work because he can only allow 1 goal a night. If he was able to allow 2 goals a night, it'd be half the work. That's how math works, right?
Sure, let's go with that.
All right. Let's touch on those other games that we sort of just mentioned. We're going in backwards order. Saturday, they lost 1-0 to the Flames. I don't want to talk about this game.
No, my mom told me, don't have nothing nice to say. Don't say anything at all.
15 shots on goal and just a waste of everyone's Saturday night. But before that, they beat the Jets 5-1.
That was fun.
That was a good game. It didn't feel super exciting. Canucks just outplayed Winnipeg. They played pretty well and scored a bunch of goals.
What was exciting was seeing if JT Miller could win that Save on Food Shopper $1 million. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think he got a little late. I think he might have had a Daryl in his ear saying, hey, we don't have that kind of money. All right. That's a lot of eggs we got to sell if we're giving away $1 million.
So I know 5 goals is $1 million. I didn't know that 4 was 10,000.
It's 100,000.
Oh, 100,000. That's even That's even way better.
It didn't used to be. I think maybe like 5 years ago they put that in, but it used to just be $1 million for 5 goals. And then people were like, well, what's the point? No one ever does that. So they added the little extra tier for some excitement.
Yeah, Miller was great. 3 goals in a row, and then he potted another assist. So a 4-point night, and it's him and That was Spencer Martin's first win, right? That was also the big
His first win
storyline.
ever in the
Wow.
NHL. I think it's his like 6th or 7th game, 5th game, one of those.
Mhm.
And the crazy thing is, like, he came in to the Canucks with like his historical save percentage wasn't great, right? I think coming into this year, I have it pulled up here, except NHL.com isn't loading. There we go. His previous seasons, so he played 3 games in 2016-17 for the Avalanche. He had an 865 in those 3 games and a 4.35 goals against average. This year, he's played 3 games. He has a 958 and a 1.59. So his career averages are now a 916 and just under 3 goals against. Still only 1 win, though.
Wow. And it's it's what's crazy about that game. Oh, I can't remember. Oh, after the game, I'm not sure if you might have been streaming, but Boudreaux was saying right away he was quelling. He was pouring the water in any fire of any goaltending controversy. He said, "No, this isn't going to be our backup this year. We still have Halak and Demko, and it's going to be great. He's going to do great in Abbotsford. Boom, end of story."
Yeah. He's going to be a really valuable piece for Abbotsford the way he's been playing.
Yeah.
And I think, I going back to tonight's game, I like that they had Halak in for this one because it's Chicago, right? It's a team that they should beat. And I don't know if the thought was, well, let's get Demko in the tougher game against Nashville, which is tomorrow, or if it was just, hey, Halak hasn't played in a while because he's been out. Either way, I kind of like that move.
Yeah, and I have to go back, Parker, and think about this, but I remember another back-to-back where it's the same thing where Halak was coming off a major layoff. And I remember, I don't know if it was Green or Boudreaux, they put Halak in the first one of the back-to-back, regardless of team, because they didn't want him sitting yet another night kind of thing. So regardless, it makes sense, though. Beat the easier team with your backup, and now you have your better goalie against the better team, and best chance to come out with 2 wins, right?
I hope so. And then last Tuesday, Edmonton beats the Canucks 3-2 in overtime. I don't really remember this game anymore. I think I've blocked it out.
I looked it up because I knew you were going crazy, like running from your other stream. So I looked this up for this particular moment. That was when PD scored by coming from the neutral zone, that wrist shot. It was beautiful. Then Mott scored on that beautiful shorthanded goal when Miller saved that Connor McDavid tip in.
Right.
Awesome. And then they got the 2 in the third period.
Yeah. So I pulled up my notes, and my main note is the Canucks got fully outplayed and allowed 50 shots.
that part too.
Shots were 9-1 in overtime. And there's also the embellishment penalty that game, which cracked me up. That was a rough game. The Canucks stole a point from that one. They got thoroughly outplayed. They steal a point. And over the course of this week, which didn't feel like a good week for the Canucks because they had lost 2 of the 3 games coming into tonight. We look at the last 7 days, and the Canucks get 6 out of a possible 8 points.
And I think you actually nailed it. I think you said 2-0-2, and I said 2-1-1.
I do think I said that because it's correct. So that must have been what I said.
Yeah, and I remember said, no, they're going to at least lose one of them. So no, that's good. You predicted the 6 points, and overall, that's not bad. It didn't look good in Calgary, but the win tonight certainly helps.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate the teams they lost to in overtime are Calgary and Edmonton, right? So that doesn't help. Canucks playoff chances did go down this week. At the start of the week, they were around the, I think, 17% mark or so. They were at 10% coming into tonight, at least per The Athletic. I think they'll go up a little bit tonight. Anaheim got a point. Edmonton got a point tonight. But I think the win will move the Canucks up a little bit. Game against Nashville tomorrow could be a good little bump going into the All-Star break, though.
Yeah, too bad none of the Pacific teams were playing against Florida tonight. Didn't that guy have 6 points or something?
Yeah, and the thing is, you said that guy because you don't know who it was.
Yeah,
because it was, I think, Montembeau, was it, or is that a goalie?
Sure, starts with an M.
Marshment. Mason Marshment.
So not Brad Marchand, not Mason McTavish, Mason Marchment.
Marchment, who has played 57 career games with 28 points. And tonight he gets 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. He was a +6, 6 shots on goal. That's crazy.
Dickinson's so jealous, man, right now.
Yeah. That's more points than Dickinson has this year, isn't it?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's crazy. So Florida is so good.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so that takes us to some other stuff about the Canucks.
Yeah.
We are wrapping up at about 8:50 tonight because I do have to run, so about 35 minutes left. So make sure you tell your friends to get in here quick. Um, one of the bigger stories from tonight, at least early in the game, Vasily Podkolzin, a healthy scratch for I think the first time in his career. Is it? Yeah, I think so.
No, I think
Has he?
Green.
Oh,
I
you know,
think
yeah,
Green's.
Travis Green probably did sit him for a game. That sounds like
Yeah,
something he'd do.
I think he sat
Uh,
him once.
yeah. Okay, so Podkolzin, a scratch. Your initial thoughts?
Yeah, and the first thing you think of is COVID. Then right away, reporters were saying no, it's not protocol related. And I think Bruce Boudreau after the game said it was just there's nothing wrong with giving a young guy a chance to watch the game, maybe observe, see something. Yeah, and obviously, you're not getting scratched if the coach is completely pleased. So there's method to Boudreau's madness, but I'm not going to say the Canucks only won. I'm sure they would have won if Podkolzin was in the lineup, but if this hasn't come back hungrier and he comes in for a Dowling or a Chason or whoever it is, then fine. I think in the big scheme of things, this is not a big deal. At least it isn't to me.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. I honestly didn't care all that much. If the Canucks had lost this game 1-0, I would have been kind of mad. But Chason scored a goal, which I didn't have on my bingo card.
It was a nice goal too.
And I never will. It's I wish that he's in a bit of a slump, right? He hasn't scored in 10. I think he has 3 points in his last 15. He's slumping a bit. Whether he needs a reset or just whether it's a mental thing or whatever it ends up being, hopefully this gets him a bit closer to what he can be.
It's funny, Miller and Besser, they played with Hoglander, then they played with Podkolzin, and now they played with Dickinson. They're probably just give us someone, a guy who can score with us.
Yeah, it's not Dickinson. From what we saw tonight, that was not it. The biggest stuff going on though is obviously trade rumors, and it's a bit early for that because trade deadline just under 2 months away. But with the Canucks bringing in an entirely new front office that has not seen this team really, right? They're not attached to anyone on this team. They aren't the ones that brought any of these players in. Conor Garland's name floating around, and that wasn't the guy they brought in, right? They don't have any attachment to it. They don't care what they paid for him. They want to know if they can get value for him. So we now have guys like Patrick Allvin being named the Canucks general manager. I guess let's go all the way back to Wednesday. Was he named? I think he was named the GM. Was it Tuesday night?
Yeah, Tuesday night during the Oilers game
because it got leaked. And then he had the press conference the following morning. What did you think of his press conference?
Thought he was fine. I thought he was very humble, articulate, very respectful,
very Swedish.
Yeah, exactly. He was very knowledgeable about the city, about our history, about our relationship with Swedes like the Sedins. And to me, he said all the right things. And this isn't meant to be, a pile on Benning and his communication skills, but Rutherford is a very clear and sharp and direct communicator. Allvin, maybe not as strong communicator as Rutherford, but you certainly believe what Allvin is saying as well. And he's not giving anyone the runaround, but he doesn't have anything to run around with anyways. He just got here. I thought it was fine as an introductory. And I think we're going to get to this. I love how they both, especially Rutherford, pointing out, you can't be a cap team and be this far out of the playoff race. And that's kind of sets the table for what they're going to do over the next 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially you have guys like Stan Smeal today, even saying things like that. Right. And he was part of the previous thing. Yeah. Maybe a reluctant part of the, of the previous regime. And they've definitely, they've foreshadowed their hand a little bit. Right.
Yes.
Where they basically said, hey, we are a cap team that isn't a playoff team. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, look, if they trade cap, the whole Halak thing, I think, becomes a non-issue, right?
Yeah.
Because if they can pay Halak's bonuses from this year's cap, then next year doesn't matter. So there's sort of a little bonus from that. So they are now looking at, basically everyone's on the table. And in my opinion, everyone should always kind of be on the table if you're always looking to get better.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think, Parker, it's a perfect storm of 4 things: up against the cap, new management, out of the playoffs, and some decent contracts in Miller and Garland especially. So why not keep everything on the table? It doesn't mean that they're going to trade all these guys in one fell swoop, But if you want to improve your team, you have to not be stubborn. You have to be open. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And you make the best point about there's no loyalty. They're not the ones who brought in Ekman Larsson and Garland and anyone, name anyone. They weren't here. So unless it's your name's PD, Hughes, Demko, maybe Horvat, you're probably at least getting considered. At least.
Yeah, for sure. So do we want to talk about, who do you want to talk about first? If we're talking about some trade, not speculation, but how willing we are to maybe move some of these people.
Let's start with Conor Garland, because he's the most recent name on the block.
Sure. So this one was kind of surprising when it first came around that, hey, maybe they're looking at Garland. And I think it was it Friedman who sort of had the first little push in that direction.
Saturday night. Yeah.
And I think, so here's the thing. Here's the reasons not to trade Conor Garland. He's only 25. He's cost controlled for 4 years, I think.
Yeah. 4 more. Yeah. Yeah.
4 more.
4.9. Yep.
And under $5 million. And he is a very, very good and very fun to watch, agile, dangerous hockey player. Why should the Canucks trade him?
So the Canucks would trade him, not saying they will, but they would trade him if he's not a Rutherford type of player. If they find he's too small, although we find that exciting, he might not be their type of player. He's small, but he's not the fastest guy ever. He's quick, but he's not burner speed. So maybe they want a different type of player going up and down their wing. That would be reasons to consider moving him.
Right. Some other things is he hasn't played as well, like at least stat wise, as he did in Arizona last year. Last year he had 39 points in 49 games. This year he has 15 less points in 40 games, so only 9 fewer games. So he's not putting up the numbers that he was last year. And so you have to wonder what this front office thinks of Conor Garland. If they think of Conor Garland as, hey, last year is something that he's going to build off of and he's going to be a 60, 65 point player, then maybe they lean more towards keeping him. If they are of the mind that, hey, we think Conor Garland is a 50 point guy, but these other teams see him as a 70 point guy, we think we can extract some value from that because they're willing to pay more than what we would be willing to give up for Conor Garland. Right. So it's all about value. And if they think they can extract value from Conor Garland I think he'd be a valuable piece, then that's sort of the reason I think they'd go there. But I don't, he's not my first pick to trade though.
No, me neither. So friends in the chat, as we go on to the next player, simply yes or no, not will the Canucks move Conor Garland, but should they consider moving him? We'd love to see what you guys think. Just a simple yes or no. And who should we go on to next, Parker?
Well, I think the obvious one is JT Miller, right? And his stocks are going up with that hat trick against the Jets a few days ago. Man, I love JT Miller, and tonight was another great example of that. He is a big reason the Canucks won tonight. Stayed off the score sheet, but him and Besser together were generating a lot. Especially they were playing with Quinn Hughes a lot. The three of them were working very well together. And you can make players like Jason Dickinson, to someone who maybe isn't paying that much attention to the game, is just saying, "Oh, that line's doing really well." You can make Jason Dickinson look pretty good. The problem is, it's all about cup window, right? If the Canucks start to contend, let's say 2 years from now, and maybe their cup window is another year from that, right? Because normally teams make the playoffs for a year or two, get knocked out in the first or second round, and then they make that big push, right? Look at like Washington, where they basically missed their cup window and they had one little spike and they came back in it. If the Canucks, if it takes them like 3 or 4 kicks at a can to be contenders, we're talking about a 31, 32-year-old JT Miller who is probably making 8.5, 9, like he's making a lot of money. And it's probably on a long-term deal. It's probably on a 7 or 8 year contract, I would imagine, maybe 6, because he'll demand that, right? So if we're talking about a guy who is maybe let's say $8 million to re-sign, and let's say 7 years, right? So you have to re-sign him until he's like 37 at $8 million. That might be good value for the first 2 or 3 years and barely. But very quickly, you're going to be running into those issues of a guy who's well on the decline, like a Louis Eriksson. Remember how many points Louis Eriksson had when the Canucks signed him. And you get that decline and things are a little rough there.
Yep. I like your number of 8 million, Parker. I've seen and heard that, especially when PD's making 7.35 and Miller's outpointing him by almost 15 points or 15 points or so. So whether it's long-term 6 or 7 or even five, it still seems long, but you're right. He's going to be going for his last home run contract, his last chance to make a lot of money. And Miller, we love him. We love so many things about him, but he doesn't scream, I love Vancouver, like all over his chest. So
right.
I don't think he's going to be taking any type of hometown discount, or, you know what I mean? Not hometown, but to stay. Wow. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about this for the last 3 weeks. What an asset to get. If you get him for this year, you have him 2 years at 5.25 for 2 playoff runs. So good.
Yeah, he is. I keep saying he is one of the best value contracts in the NHL. Yeah. And if you want a playoff rental, he is the dream for a playoff rental. And because of that, the Canucks should be able to command an absolute ransom for him. He should be extremely valuable. And we're talking about if we're talking about a long-term contract, that is a really good way to shorten a cup window, right? If the Canucks were to, if the Canucks are saying, well, we want to win a Stanley Cup and we think JT Miller is a big piece of that, we're going to give him this money for a lot of years. Well, the problem is if years 4, 5, 6, and 7, he is underperforming that contract in a cap world. What I'd like to go back to is the best team in the NHL is usually whatever team's getting the most out of the cap, because every team gets the same amount of money to spend. So the best you can do with that money, the better team you'll make, unless of course you're Ottawa or Arizona, where you just don't have real money. So the cap doesn't really matter. So if they're overpaying guys, like they're already going to be overpaying Oliver Ekman-Larsson at that point, I guess Myers will probably be almost done by then. Maybe the last year of Tyler Myers' contract, they'll be overpaying for at that point, unless they can find ways out of those. And then you add, if JT Miller's playing still well and maybe like a $4.5 million player, but you're paying him 8, well, there's another 3.5 off the cap that you're struggling with. When on the other hand, you could have these younger, if you go out and get a 21-year-old, maybe defenseman, maybe he's making, almost no money because he's a younger player as an RFA, but bringing in more positive value.
Yes. And what's the first thing the Sedin said when they came here? They said they want players who can outplay their contract. And Miller right now, he's outplaying his contract.
Oh, by
next
a mile.
year. Yeah, next year he'll outplay his contract. But Parker, there's gonna be a time in year 2 or year 3 of that new 5, 6, 7 year deal where it's gonna flip and where he's not outplaying his contract. And then, you're exactly right. Whether you use the term stuck or saddled, but you're now stuck with that contract for the remainder of that contract when you want to be a contender. And that's why they're considering it. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but that's why they're considering it.
And that's when it becomes a negative asset, right?
Yes.
Right now, JT Miller is the peak of positive assets. The Athletic does these player cards, and one of the things they do is their actual salary and their market value based on the way they're playing. Right now, JT Miller, $5.25 million salary. He is playing as if he was his market value, if he was a UFA right now, is $8.4 million. So he is generating basically $3 million of positive value. And the Canucks top end is a lot like this, right? Horvat is a market value around $6 million. So a bit of positive value. They have Brock Besser at a market value of $7.9 million. He's only making 5.9. Apparently Tanner Pearson is a positive value right now, the way he's playing.
Believe it.
Pedersen is apparently right on the money at 7.4. Yeah. Conor Garland is 8.3 million market value, and he's only making 5. That seems a little high to me, but hey, it's fine by me. And Jason Dickinson is negative. Jason Dickinson is playing like a $0.9 million player.
He's got to give some of his money back.
Yeah. Well, Juho Lammikko is literally a negative. So
that's because
value is negative $100,000.
Well, they have the wrong name on him. You change it to, John Pond.
John Pond, yes.
Yeah, he's gonna
see,
it's right
it's because they don't like Europeans.
Let's move on. Okay, so Miller, we've kind of laid out the reasons why. Many reasons why. The reason why not to is because everything that he is, he plays in every situation.
He's a fantastic player.
Yeah, and leader on and off the ice, all those things. Oh, by the way, did we talk about this already when we? Or I think I was talking to. No, maybe it was us when Bruce Boudreau called JT Miller like the heartbeat or the pulse of the room. Do you think that's an insult to Horvat, or is that just it's good you have another leader alongside?
I don't think it's
Horvat?
an insult to Horvat at all.
Okay.
Because that's not Horvat's style, right? Horvat
Okay.
is a much more the quiet, sort of stoic leader. But then when he gets excited or gets animated, it's serious, right? I mean, you think back to his goals against the Blues in the playoffs, right? Again, pretty quiet, hardworking guy, and when he pops off with a celebration, it's like, oh, he cares, right? And that's the kind of leader he is. While JT Miller is much more open about his emotion, I would say, right? He's very animated, whether in a negative fashion or a positive fashion. That's just who he is, right? Love it or hate it. Personally, I love it. I think that's what makes him the heartbeat of his team, because he always wears his heart on his sleeve. And I think, people always know how he feels.
Right. Okay. That's fair.
All right. Any other names you want to go to here?
Well, I guess the other big one is Besser. That's the last one, I guess.
And Besser's a weird one because his name has sort of been floated for years at this point. Yeah. And again, a lot of it comes down to whether or not Brock Besser is the player that you hope he is, right? Brock Besser was always supposed to be, 30 goal scorer. And he's not getting there, right? He's on pace right now, like 23 goals ish, I think, which is fine. He's on pace for maybe 24, 25, which is fine and good, but he's on pace to be like a 50-point player. And again, probably a very valuable piece. It's whether or not, again, it all comes down to the salary cap. I think if the Canucks were to go out and trade a JT Miller or a Conor Garland, and then I don't think they trade Besser, because I think they've suddenly cleared up, $5 million of cap space that pays for the Halak bonus. It's not a great solution, but it clears up at least a little bit, and then maybe they don't go the Besser route. Problem is, you got to pay Brock Besser again this year, right? End of the season, and he's going to get a raise. Whether or not you think he's worth that raise, that sort of depends on if you make that move. If you think he's going to be worth that $7 million that he gets paid, then you keep him, then you pay him. If you don't think so, then you try to get some assets for it.
And this one's interesting, Parker, because I know a lot of people, they look at Besser's age and they say he's only is he 23 or 24?
24.
Okay, so he's pretty young. Okay. Yeah, really young then. Thanks for reminding me.
So he's really young. He's 3 months older than me.
Okay, so he's a baby basically, and so he still has his best years ahead of him. We've seen glimpses of what he can do. So there are a lot of people, Parker, in this market who say you can't give up on a guy like that. With his pure goal scoring talent, bit streaky as we've talked about. He's got the hardest passes I've ever seen. He passes as hard as he shoots, but his hockey IQ is strong. His effort level is generally really good. All those things. But then is he ever going to pan out to be the guy that we want him to be, the guy that we saw glimpses of in his rookie year? I don't know. It's so challenging.
Yeah,
I like him. I like him a lot. And I don't think the Canucks want to trade away players that they drafted. Every GM gets a little stubborn that way. It's almost a small admission of failure. It isn't, but they might look at it that way. Yeah. So you're right. If one of Miller or Garland gets traded first, I do not see them trading Besser.
I agree. And again, I love Brock Besser, right? He's so like when he scores, it's sick. He's a very good hockey player. Having a bit of a down year this year, but a lot of people were having down years. Right. And I think he's as good of a candidate for a bounce back as anybody, to be honest. I mean, last year, what was he on pace for? He was on pace. He was on pace for 34 goals last year. He scored 23 and 56. So if he's a 30 goal scorer, I think that's a lot of value. And a big part of it, I mean, he's been like Elias Pettersson has been playing well, right? For most of the year. If he's out there playing with an Elias Pettersson who's playing his best game, then Brock Besser probably has 18 goals at this point or something like that.
Right. So I have a question for you. We only have to qualify him at his last year of his contract because he's under the old rules at 7.5. That's only if we can still negotiate with them outside of that, correct? Or do you have to do that first?
So the way it works is they can negotiate anything they want with him up until the RFA deadline, which I think it's July 1st, or I think it's whatever free agency is, or maybe the week before free agency or something like that. And so the qualifying offer has to be, I would imagine it has to be 1 year at that number, right? So they could say,
that's
hey, we'll
correct.
give you 1 year at 7.5 or whatever that number is. Is it
Yes.
7.5 was
It
the
is
was the
7 point.
peak?
It is 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they could say, hey, we'll give you 1 year at 7.5. That's your qualifying offer. Now we
Yeah.
retain your RFA rights, right? They have to
Right.
present him with that offer. They can also not give him that offer, and then he's a UFA.
Right.
The other option, they could present him that say, hey, you are qualified. Here's your 1 by 7.5.
Mhm.
Also, here is a 5 by 6.5 or something, right? And he can choose. So he has every right to sign that 1 year deal. But he'd still be an RFA after that. Because he'd still only be 26 to that point.
Right.
So he'd have 1 more year of RFA. But yeah, so they could just say, okay, we're going to qualify this, but they have until then to negotiate anything else that they want.
So you could offer him a 5 times 7 prior to that RFA deadline, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then they would just offer him a 1 by 7.5 at the same time. Or they would offer him one. Yeah. So they could, if they didn't want to give him that 1 year contract, they could say, yeah, here's 5 by 7 or 5.6 5 by 6.5. And then on RFA deadline day, they present him with the qualifying offer,
right?
Which means they retain his rights until.
Because if you don't qualify him, then you lose him for nothing, which would be really
UFA.
Yeah. Okay.
Because some other team will pay him that.
Yes. Okay. Great. So Garland, Miller, Besser, we'll watch them all.
I saw a fun comment from Fifth Line Center saying trading Miller would be the we give up of the season. I think trading any of these guys probably would be. Are we there yet?
Yes. Sorry. Yes, I agree with that comment. No, we're not there just yet. But yeah, it's nice to win 2, lose 2, win 1, lose 1. But we're not really making up a lot of ground in the standings, as you kind of hinted at too, when other teams are picking up single points as well. Yeah, we still got to go 11 games over 500 in the last 37. That's a tall task.
Do you remember, I think it was 4 years ago, the St. Louis Blues went into the trade deadline. Doug Armstrong, their GM, went into the trade deadline. The Blues were in a playoff spot, and he traded away one of his I don't remember who it was, but he basically traded away a player for a first round pick. And he's like, yep, we're a playoff team. We're not a Stanley Cup contender right now. So why would we use him, who is basically a rental at this point, when we can gain an asset, and make and maybe use that asset to make a push either next year or the year after. A very forward thinking move. And again, I don't think the Canucks are in a place where they should be giving up on the season, but they also need to be realistic with themselves, right? The Canucks aren't winning the Stanley Cup this year, right? If you go on a sports book right now, you're probably looking at, 200 to 1 odds, 100 to 1 odds. And I think even then the sports book's taking your money for that. So at that point, you have to sort of look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, yeah, we could make the playoffs and maybe we make the second round, but there's no way we get all the way. So maybe we trade an asset and try to pick something up. Now, Miller's an interesting one, because if you think you're going to contend next year, then maybe you don't make that move.
Yes.
But some other players, then it's a really weird argument. And it's a weird thing because you do essentially have to give up when you have a shot. And that's what St. Louis did a few years ago. And they won the cup like 1 or 2 years later.
And 2 things you said there, Parker, that really stand out to me. One of them is, you're right. We've talked about this. Miller's got 2 seasons left. So you technically could hold on to him, see how you do next year. And maybe his asking price is even bigger. Probably not, but at least it's going to be close to. So there's no one saying that you have to make a decision on Miller this year, although you might want to pull the trigger. The other thing that you said was, for every person that points to St. Louis from 3 years ago and says, oh, but they were in last place in January and they won the cup. For every person who says that, that's kind of the exception, not the rule, right?
Yeah.
So
that's one of the most dangerous things to happen.
I know. Yes.
Is when these one-offs happen and teams like, okay, well, this is our model now. Now we just that was Jim Benning's idea. It was like, hey, if we just get in, anything can happen. Yeah. But not really, because anything can happen, as in you're going to have to go on a crazy run and beat Colorado, then Nashville, then St. Louis, and then Tampa Bay, right? Like,
easy.
Sure, it could happen, but the odds are so low, right?
Yeah.
That it's not worth the risk. It's not worth losing JT Miller for nothing to get that shot at probably getting knocked out in 5 games of the first round.
Yeah. Can you put up Kai's? I know we're not into questions yet, but can you put up Kai's? It's such a good point. Do you find as fans we are too attached to our players? This team is constructed poorly and has major cap flaws. How are we supposed to get better without trading anybody with value? And we've talked about this before, Parker, where it comes to you overvalue your own players. When we're talking about, oh, we can get this for this guy, or we can get this for that. No, it's very rare that we can get that because we have emotional attachment and it's natural. And it's kind of what Kai's getting at there, which I fully agree with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm too attached to our players, right? I don't want them to trade Brock Besser.
Yeah.
Brock Besser's so sick.
Yeah.
and you know, and I have 2 Brock Besser jerseys and like, you know, and you get attached to these players, and social media is a really big piece of this because we get the sort of little behind the scenes clips of them like playing soccer before the game, or like the hugs between Pettersson and Besser when one of them scores. And you're like, that's something that matters to us. And we're losing that. The other thing is we're also gaining something in return. That's harder to see in the short term. Aaliyah's saying that the player I was talking about was Paul Stastny. They got 4 assets from him. Paul Stastny trade. Let's see. Oh man, he got traded again a couple months ago, so it's really hard to find the right one. Trade Blues
from Blues. You got it. Yeah.
So yeah, they got Eric Foley, who was a forward prospect who I don't think panned out. They also got a first rounder and a 4th.
Okay.
So yeah, they traded away Paul Stastny, a really good player, in a year they were going to be a playoff team, to get more assets. And then they could use those assets the following year to trade for a different player or whatever they want to do.
Wow. Yes, and when JT Miller, he's the top of the trade board, so to speak. People have been talking about 3 or 4 assets from him. First round pick, prospect, 1 or 2 prospects, and 1 roster player. That's a haul.
That's a huge return, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, is you can get a lot because these are teams that, the thing is, if you have maybe 3 teams that want JT Miller, right? There's not only the incentive of, hey, if we make the move for this guy, we get JT Miller. You know what else happens? The other 2 teams don't, right? If you're a team that's looking to win the Stanley Cup, let's say you're a Colorado, right? You want to break through and win that cup, but maybe Florida is also trying to get this player. And you're thinking, man, if we go up against Florida in the cup finals, it's either we have him or they do. So it's a bidding war, right? So you can get extra value there, and rentals are, you know, they're a real good way to pick up some value, right? I mean, look at Thomas Vanek. We got Tyler Mott for him. And everyone thought like, oh, who's Tyler Mott? He's excellent for us. So it's a really good way to maximize value and sort of keep a prospect pool going, because the Canucks don't really have a prospect pool right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was just going to lead into. Our last first round pick was Vasily Podkolzin, because we did not have a first round pick in 2020. We did not have a first round pick in 2021. So you bet that Jim Rutherford is going to be looking to acquire picks as opposed to trading them out. How do you acquire picks? By trading your current players. So there's going to be some tough decisions, as Stan Smeal, as you alluded to, Parker, that Smeal was talking about. But that's how you acquire more picks and prospects, is you have to trade good players out.
Yeah. So The Athletic does a thing every year. Scott Wheeler there does a prospect pool ranking. I think you already know where the Canucks placed on this, because I think you heard it in probably the same place I did. The Vancouver Canucks have in the NHL, according to this, at least it's one person's opinion, but hey, it doesn't sound that off to me. The Canucks have the number 28th ranked prospect pool, 5th worst in the NHL. And you look at their prospect pool, their number 1 prospect is Jack Rathbone, who's a 22-year-old defenseman who's on the edge of sort of being on the team. But I mean, he's already 22, right? Like, he's not going to be a number 1 D-man, right? We know that. Then it's Klimovich, who was a 2nd round pick this last year. And then it's Jet Wu, who looks like he might end up being a number 6 one day. And then it's Mikey DiPietro, who hasn't shown much in his NHL time, and he hasn't looked great in the AHL this year. And then you're on guys like Yoni Yermo and Jacob Truscott, and Linus Carlson. Like, you're out. Like, that's it, right? So the only guys that really have a shot of making it are like Jack Rathbone, who might be a 3-4 one day, Klimovich, who might might be a top 9 player, maybe. And Jet Wu, who might crack the NHL lineup one day. But that's it. The Canucks don't have any cheap guys coming up.
And it's crazy how they're 5th from the bottom, where in the same ranking just 4 or 5 years ago, they're 4th or 5th from the top, because the year they drafted Hughes and Petey hadn't played yet, your prospects at that time are Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, right? And then Jet Wu at that time was actually same year as Hughes and really highly ranked. So it just shows you how quickly a couple guys graduate to the NHL, how quickly that prospect table turns. And you're right, Parker. It's not great.
Right. And last year on those rankings, they were number 18.
Yeah.
And their 1 and 2 are Höglander, Podkolzin. Well, they're not prospects anymore. They're on the team.
Yes.
So that's it. Right. They haven't added anyone new other than Klimovich.
Can you go backwards more or no more? Like it went from
I can go back to
18?
2020 and they were number 13. I can't.
Yeah. So they were dropping like 5 or 10 every time. Wow.
Yeah. All right. We got to wrap up in a couple minutes. I do want to just bring some attention to the Arizona Coyotes, who are going to likely play in a 5,000 seat arena for the next 3 or 4 years. How is the NHL allowing this?
Because Gary Bettman loves them. He absolutely loves Arizona.
I don't know why.
I don't know. He's so stubborn. Maybe we were talking about admissions of failure. Maybe this would be the biggest admission of failure in his eyes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He could just move him to. I was listening to Halford and Bruff on Friday, and I think it was Drance on for Bruff, and he was saying it's like if you put this team in Penticton, they would genuinely make more money than if they played in this 5,000 seat arena at ASU or wherever it's going to be. And he's not wrong. If you had it like the South Okanagan Event Center, it's like 6,000, 7,000 seats or whatever it is. You'd sell that out easily if it's an NHL team there every game, right? The Penticton V's sell it out, which I thought was really funny. I just think this is so dumb, and it hurts the entire league, right? It brings hockey-related revenue down, which is going to keep the salary cap lower. It's dumb.
Was it Marchand who or some player made a joke about this?
I hate Marchand so much, but he's so good on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said he's like they'll still have to give away like 4,500 tickets or something to sell it.
And he's also the same guy who, when Carolina beat Boston and whipped them, he said, "You're the reason why we're in escrow" or something. Yeah,
that's great. That's great. I hate him, but he's a hilarious person. All right, last thing I want to touch on.
Yep.
Canada won yesterday in World Cup qualifying. Oh, that was a good game. That was a good sports day yesterday.
It was
all football. European football, American football, great sports game. Let's take like 2 questions before we wrap up here.
That was awesome.
Any that caught your eye?
Well, just really quickly about that 2-0 Canada win. That was beautiful. And then all 6 NFL playoff games, the 4 last week, 2 this week, all within a touchdown or less. Last second. Amazing.
Yeah. The best playoffs you've ever seen in like any sport. It just have been absolutely fantastic. Go Bengals.
Yes. Is that who you want?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you like them, or you just like the Cinderella
I do
story?
I do like the Bengals. They were my pick from the start of the playoffs.
Wow.
And also I don't want an NFC West team to win. So that is yes.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Let's see. Any of these questions we want to take here?
There's some good ones. I think they're like
they were higher up
ago, though.
So I'm scrolling. Scrolling up.
Let's see.
If you had a good question, copy it and paste it again.
Yeah, we got a minute, so
we have 1 minute, and I want to take one question. While
we're waiting,
Tanner says Clay. Tanner says Clay, you're the best.
Well, I think that's one of my sons in their screen name, but thank you, Tanner. Sean, Jacob. Tanner. Speaking of Tanner, put that one up. Spencer Martin or Halak? Who has more value?
I
think still Halak.
I was like, Halak, and then I was like, well, he's more expensive.
Yeah.
The thing is, Halak is an NHL goalie. Spencer Martin played 3 really good games.
Yeah, Halak is proven, and any play. I think if you put both guys in front of a playoff contender, they're going to take Halak over Martin. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's it. We have to wrap because I have to run. Thank you guys very much for sticking with us tonight. If you enjoyed, hit like, and if you missed any part of it, you can rewind back to the beginning. You guys know the deal at this point. Subscribe, hit the bell,
Mhm.
all those buttons. If you can also find the podcast version, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever podcast platform you use. Just search it. Search Canucks After Dark. It's easy. It's free. Clay, any parting words for the night?
Well, next Monday, we'll have one Canucks game to talk about and one All-Star game to talk about.
Yes. Go Pacific Division. Pacific Division for the Stanley Cup.
Number one.
Yes. All right.
West
Thank
is
you.
best.
Thank you guys very much for hanging out with us. And we'll see you next week.